It's the age-old question. Is it nature or is it nurture, according to intelligent investor himself, Jason Zweig? There's probably a lot more nature in it than you think when it comes to investing and investing stupidly. Blame your parents. You had a very interesting post out today about a study in Sweden that looked at twins, and they found that basically a lot of it comes down to your DNA.
Yeah, what they did, Evan, is they looked at 5 common investing errors that almost everyone tends to make, and I won't
not
list,
diversifying.
Right. Yeah, and not diversifying, trading too much. Refusing to sell your losers, and they looked at a couple others as well. And what they did is they looked at thousands of people, and they had very good records. They could see not only
twins. They looked at twins.
They looked at 30,000 twins, and then they looked at a control group that weren't related. They looked at fraternal twins who share some DNA, and identical twins whose DNA is essentially the same. And they could see everything these people owned. They could see everything they sold.
Okay, what was the upshot of it?
And the upshot of it is that the variation in genetic makeup appears to control between 1/4 and 1/2 of people's financial behavior. So yes, environment is important, and experience is important,
and upbringing and all that kind of stuff. But it's your genes.
But your genes are a large part of it. And what's interesting is it depended on which bad behavior they were looking at. There was variation in how great the level of genetic control appeared to be.
Right. So now, what was your personal takeaway? You have. You know yourself very well. You're a student. I think you're a father, right? So do you believe that that nature is that nature, your genetic hardwiring is so determinative in your own investing and how you look at the world?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been through similar experiments to what these guys were describing, and through years of discipline, you can overcome your genetic predispositions. But what's the important takeaway here is you have genetic predispositions. And you may be born with an inclination to be a bad investor. And if you want to be a good one, you have to work at it probably harder than you might otherwise have realized.
Right. I mean, it would seem obvious, but I have 2 children. They have very different temperaments. They're raised in the same house. And I can't imagine that if they were investing, that they would invest the same way. But that's largely because of the temperament. And if you said to me, I would say, their temperament, most of it came from their genes.
That's correct.
And there's no way, for them to change their behavior would take work and effort and all the things that you mentioned. Are there any kind of big takeaways that anybody's going to get from this kind of study other than to state that your genes matter?
Yeah, I think the most important takeaway is a lot of investors think they can count on their willpower. And they can say, well, when the market gets too bullish, I'll be disciplined, or when the market gets too bearish, I won't panic. Well, you're probably going to do what your genes tell you to do unless you really train yourself over the course of many years to manage your own emotions.
Yeah. One of the things that I always used to think about when I was doing trading was I always liked the idea of the George Costanza strategy, which is the opposite. It's like whatever you're thinking to do, you're probably better off doing the opposite. It's a famous Seinfeld episode, and unfortunately for many investors may actually turn out to be the better thing to do.
It very well might.
Jason Zweig, the intelligent investor. Come back when you come up with another study that maybe disproves this thing about twins.
So I will, Evan.